I had always believed marriage was built on trust, mutual respect, and the understanding that boundaries exist for a reason. My wife, Farah, however, seemed to have a very different interpretation. Our relationship had been growing tense for months, small arguments, unspoken grievances, and a creeping sense of dissatisfaction on her part. I tried to communicate, tried to reassure her, but nothing seemed to satisfy the restlessness I saw in her eyes. Then came the ultimatum. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, Farah leaned back in her chair, her expression cold and deliberate. "If you don't spend time with your ex," she said, "our marriage is over. You have to prove you have no secrets." I blinked. I stared at her, my mind processing the audacity of her demand. She was asking me to nurture a connection that had no place in a healthy marriage, to spend time with someone I had left behind years ago, all under the guise of trust. Most people might have reacted with anger, confusion, or desperation, but I didn't. I simply looked at her calmly and said, "Okay." Her eyes widened, and I could see the shock ripple through her. She had expected resistance, arguments, pleading, perhaps even tears. Instead, she was met with measured calm, a quiet that carried an edge she hadn't anticipated. "Okay," she repeated, her voice incredulous. "You're actually agreeing?" I nodded. "Yes, I'll do exactly what you ask." Over the next few days, I prepared carefully. I reconnected with my ex, Asia, not out of desire, not out of curiosity, but purely to fulfill the conditions of Farah's bizarre ultimatum. I reached out casually, suggesting a meeting over coffee, something neutral, public, and strictly superficial. Asia, surprised but cordial, agreed. When Farah discovered that I had arranged a meeting, her satisfaction was palpable. She expected jealousy, conflict, or at least discomfort on my part. Instead, she saw me walking calmly into a situation she had framed as threatening. Neutral and composed, with no room for manipulation, the meeting itself was uneventful in terms of emotion. Aja and I spoke politely, reminisced briefly about old times, and kept the conversation light and superficial. I made it clear in every word and gesture that the past was the past and that nothing could or would interfere with my marriage now. Yet Farah, watching from afar through subtle texts and messages, couldn't reconcile my calm demeanor with the scenario she had imagined over the following weeks. She continued to insist on proof meetings, conversations, and harmless interactions with my ex. Every time I approached it with the same quiet composure. I followed her instructions to the letter, never overstepping, never bending rules, and never allowing my demeanor to reflect frustration or irritation. It was in this calm obedience that the real shift occurred. Farah expected chaos, but she received control my control. She demanded betrayal and jealousy, and instead, she got calm, calculated compliance that exposed the absurdity of her demands. She realized, gradually, that the power she thought she held was illusory. She had tried to manipulate trust through coercion, to force me into a position of vulnerability, but her plan had backfired. One evening, as we sat quietly after dinner, she finally spoke, her voice tentative. I thought you would be upset," she said. "I thought you'd react differently." I looked at her, steady and composed. "I did exactly what you asked," I replied. "I spent time with my ex in the manner you dictated. You wanted proof? You have it. But what you've learned is something you didn't anticipate. Calmness and control reveal more. Truth than anger ever could." Her expression faltered. I could see the realization dawning, the betrayal she had imagined. The leverage she thought she had evaporated in the presence of measured composure. By following her instructions without succumbing to emotional manipulation, I had reclaimed the balance in our marriage and exposed the lows. Toxicity of ultimatums disguised as tests of loyalty. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic shifted. Farah no longer issued ultimatums. The lesson had been absorbed silently and fully. She realized that trust cannot be coerced, that manipulation carries consequences, and that calmness in the face of provocation is a far more powerful response than anger or resistance. The experience taught me a profound lesson about marriage, boundaries, and personal power. Ultimatums, especially those rooted in insecurity or manipulation, reveal the fragility of character both in the assurer and the recipient. By responding with calm, deliberate action rather than emotional reaction, I not only preserve my dignity but also expose the absurdity and futility of coercion. Looking back, I understand that the moment Farah demanded I spend time with my ex was less about trust and more about control. Her ultimatum was an attempt to manipulate my emotions, to assert dominance through fear of loss. My calm agreement, adherence to boundaries, and composed demeanor dismantled the illusion. It was a silent revelation. Trust cannot be forced, and attempts to provoke betrayal will always backfire against the instigator. Over time, our marriage shifted from tension to cautious understanding. Farah learned that trust is earned through transparency, honesty, and respect, not ultimatums. And I learned that composure in the face of provocation is not weakness, but strength. The quiet power of calm, deliberate choice exposed the true character of both of us and ultimately reshaped the foundation of our relationship. In the end, her demand, meant to provoke, manipulate, and control, became the catalyst for clarity, awareness, and the restoration of balance. By saying okay and following through with measured precision, I revealed the limits of manipulation, the power of calm response, and the inevitability of truth when actions are observed without bias or emotional distortion. That evening, after the latest meeting with my ex, Farah and I sat in silence. She understood finally that her attempt to coerce trust through betrayal had failed. I had demonstrated, without confrontation or anger, that loyalty cannot be compelled, and that composure is the ultimate form of control. It was a quiet, powerful victory, not over her, but over the toxicity of manipulation itself. The lesson remains etched in my mind. Ultimatums rooted in insecurity or manipulation reveal the character of both parties. Calmness, adherence to personal boundaries, and measured response reveal truth more decisively than any confrontation or emotional outburst ever could. In the face of betrayal disguised as a demand, saying okay was not submission, it was strategy, power and clarity incarnate. And in that calm, quiet manner, I reclaimed not just control of my marriage, but control of my life.